Yeah, might be on that side. Okay. स्वामी महाराज की जय। आनंद कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। जिसका आचार्य श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। नाम आचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहा श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद अद्वैत गदाधर शिवाचार्य गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम राधा कुंती गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। द्रौपदी धाम की जय। गंगा मई की जय। यमुना मई की जय। तुलसी देवी की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। समवेता भक्तवृंद की जय। गौर प्रेमानंद all glories to the assembled devotee. All glories to the assembled devotee. All glories to the assembled devotee. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
The lotus feet of our spiritual master, by the only by which we have attained your devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, we can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the fields. We take shelter. His divine grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki. Excellent. Hare Krishna. Welcome in Zoom audience to our Srimad Bhagavatam class today. Thank you all for joining us. It will be just a reminder for those of you at home, please follow along with keep yourselves on mute as we set up verses for response for them. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihar Kunja Bihari Gopi Janama Shoranandana Vrajajana Ramchandra Yashoranandana Vrajajana Ramchandra Yamuna Tira Manachari Yamuna Tira Manachari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashoranandana Vrajajana Ramchandra Yashoranandana Vrajajana Ramchandra Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Manachari Paramahansa Parivrajaka Chandraja Shukatana Shishimada's Divine Grace Shalaisi Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Anantakoti Vaishnava Vindiki Namacharya Shri Sadhuki Saho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shivasi Gaura Bhaktivedanta Shri Shivana Krishna Prabhu Gopinath Shamanam Narakangiri Govardhanti Shri Vindamandanti Happy My Purdhanti Yamuna Mai Bhakti Devi Tosti Shri Sankirtanki Supriya Madamiki Prataraj Shima Bhagavatanki Nitai Gaur Primanande. All glories to the Lord. All glories to the Lord. All glories to the Lord. All glories, all glories, all glories of the feet of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Kristaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaura Bhakti Nirvishesha Shri Paschatya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Today we are in the 5th chapter, the 1st canto, text number 11. Is it big enough up there? Yeah. Tadvag Vishargo Janataga Viplavo Yasmin Pratishlokam Abhadhavyantyapi Namanya Antasya Yasho Ankitaniyat Shinvanti Gayanti Grinanti Sadhava Tadvag Vishargo Janataga Viplavo Yasmin Pratishlokam Abhadhavyantyapi Namanya Antasya Yasho Kitaniyat Shrinvanti Gayanti Grinanti Sadhava Tadvag Vishargo Janataga Viplavo Yasmin Pratishlokam Abhadhavyantyapi Namanya Antasya Yasho Ankitaniyat Shinvanti Gayanti Grinanti Sadhava Please chant. Bhagavashago Janataga Viplavo
Yasmin Pratishlokam Abhadhyavatyati
Yasmin Pratishlokam Abhadyanantapi
Amanyanantasya Yashon Kitani Jat
Nanya Antasya Yashonikanyat
Grinvanti Gayanti Grinanti Sadhava
Vanti Gayanti Vivanti Sadhava Harvag Vishargo Janataga Viplavo Yasmin Pratishlokam Abhadyavantapi Namanya Antasya Yashonikantiyat Vinvanti Gayanti Grinanti Sadhava Bhag Vishargo Janataga Viplavo
Yasmin Pratishlokam Adhatyapi
Tasmin Pratishlokam Abhadyavantapi
Namanya Anantasya Yasyo Nikitanyat
Navanya Antasya Yashonikantiyat
Linvanti Gayanti Grinati Sadhavaya
Vinvanti Gayanti Grinanti Sadhava
Sargo Janatara Viplavo
Bhagwan Vishargo Janataga Viplavo
Pratishlokam Bhagavati
Yasmin Pratishlokam Abhadyavantapi
Namanya Tasya Yasyon Kitanyat
Navanya Antasya Yashonikantiyat
Gayanti Grinanti Sadhava
Vinvanti Gayanti Grinanti Sadhava
Tadvad Visargo Janataga Viplavo
Tadvad Vishargo Janataga Viplavo
Yasmin Pati Slokam Abhagavati
Yasmin Pratishlokam Abhadyavyadyapi
Namanya Anyasya Yashon Titanyat
Navanya Antasya Yashonikantiyat
Srivanti Gayanti Granati Sabha
Vinvanti Gayanti Grinanti Sadhava Bhag Vishargo Janataga Viplavo Yasmin Pratishlokam Abhadyavantapi Navanya Antasya Yashonikantiyat Shinvanti Gayanti Grinanti Sadhava. Synonyms: Tat, that. Vak, vocabulary. Visharga, creation. Janata, the people in general. Agha, sins. Viplava, revolutionary. Yasmin, in which. Pratishlokam, each and every stanza. Abadhavati, irregularly composed. Api, in spite of. Namani, transcendental names, etc. Antasya, of the unlimited Lord. Yasha, glories. Ankitani, depicted. Yeah. What? Shrinvanti, do hear. Gayanti, do sing. Grinanti, do accept. Sadhavaha, the purified men who are honest. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. On the other hand, that literature, which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. This is a longer purport, and what we've been doing in the morning classes here is we take turns reading the purport, different members of the audience. So we have a microphone there. Have it up here, everybody can see. And, when to begin?
It is a qualification of the great thinkers to pick up the best, even from the worst. It is said that the intelligent man should pick up nectar from a stock of poison, should accept gold even from a filthy place, should accept a good and qualified wife even from an obscure family, and should accept a good lesson even from a man or from a teacher who comes from the untouchables. These are some of the ethical instructions for everyone in every place without exception. But a saint is far above the level of an ordinary man. He is always absorbed in glorifying the Supreme Lord, because by broadcasting the holy name and fame of the Supreme Lord, the polluted atmosphere of the world will change. And as a result of propagating the transcendental literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam, people will become sane in their transactions. While preparing this commentation on this particular stanza of Srimad Bhagavatam, we have a crisis before us. Our neighboring friend China has attacked the border of India with a militaristic spirit. We have practically no business in the political field, yet we see that previously there were both China and India, and they both lived peacefully for centuries without ill feeling. The reason is that they lived those days in an atmosphere of God consciousness, and every country over the surface of the world was God-fearing, pure-hearted, and simple, and there was no question of political diplomacy. There is no cause of quarrel between the two countries, China and India, over land which is not very suitable for habitation. And certainly there is no cause for fighting on the issue. But due to the age of quarrel, Kali, which we have discussed, there is always a chance of quarrel on slight provocation. This is due not to the issue in question, but to the polluted atmosphere of this age. Systematically, there is propaganda by a section of people to stop glorification of the name and fame of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, there is a great need for disseminating the message of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world. It is the duty of every responsible Indian to broadcast the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the world, to do all the supermost good as well as to bring about the desired peace in the world. Because India has failed in her duty by neglecting this responsible work, there is so much quarrel and trouble all over the world. We are confident that if the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam is received only by the leading men of the world, certainly there will be a change of hearts, and naturally the people in general will follow them. The mass of people in general are tools in the hands of the modern politicians and leaders of the people. If there is a change of heart of the leaders only, certainly there will be a radical change in the atmosphere of the world. We know that our honest attempt to present this great literature conveying transcendental messages for reviving the God consciousness of the people in general and re-spiritualizing the world atmosphere is fraught with many difficulties. Our presenting this matter in adequate language, especially a foreign language, will certainly fail, and there will be so many literary discrepancies despite our honest attempt to present it in the proper way. But we are sure that with all our faults in this connection, the seriousness of the subject matter will be taken into consideration, and the leaders of society will still accept this due to its being an honest attempt to glorify the Almighty God. When there's a fire in a house, the inmates of the house go out to get help from the neighbors who may be foreigners, and yet without knowing the language, the victims of the fire express themselves, and the neighbors understand the need, even though not expressed in the same language. The same spirit of cooperation is needed to broadcast this transcendental message of the Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the polluted atmosphere of the world. After all, it is a technical science of spiritual values, and thus we are concerned with the techniques and not with the language. If the techniques of this great literature are understood by the people of the world, there will be success.
When there are too many materialistic activities by the general public, there is no wonder that a person or a nation attacks another person or nation on slight provocation. That is the rule of this age of Kali or quarrel. The atmosphere is already polluted with corruption, all description, and everyone knows it well. There are so many unwanted literatures full of materialistic ideas of sense gratification. In many countries, there are bodies appointed by the state to detect and censor obscene literature. This means that neither the government nor the responsible leaders of the public want such literature. Yet, it is in the marketplace because the people want it for sense gratification. The people in general want to read. That is a natural instinct. But because their minds are polluted, they want such literatures. Under the circumstances, transcendental literature like Srimad Bhagavatam will not only diminish the activities of the corrupt mind of the people in general, but also it will supply food for their hankering after reading some interesting literature. In the beginning, they may not like it because one suffering from jaundice is reluctant to take sugar candy. But we should know that sugar candy is the only remedy for jaundice. Similarly, let there be systematic propaganda for popularizing reading of the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, which will act like sugar candy for the jaundice-like condition of sense gratification. When men have a taste for this literature, the other literatures, which are catering poison to society, will then automatically cease.
We are sure therefore that we're sure therefore that everyone in human society will welcome Srimad Bhagavatam, even though it is now presented with so many faults, for it is recommended by Sri Narada, who has very kindly appeared in this chapter.
Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umliyatam Yen Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So this verse started on the other hand. So I'm going to go to the verse right before, just to, which we just got done studying, so that we understand what the comparison is that is being made. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. And then our verse today. On the other hand, that literature, which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, form, and pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is of a different creation, full of transcendental words directed towards bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. So the description is given that there are two different types of birds, the crows and the swans. And the previous verse described that these literatures that do not describe the glories and the pastimes, they're not directed toward understanding the glories of the Lord, are like places of pilgrimage for the crows. And the crows, Srila Prabhupada describes in the purport, are the materialistic fruitive worker who only strive after sense gratification in this world, and that is their only goal. A crow you will find usually around a garbage can or a carcass somewhere, picking it apart. And for them, that is their pleasure. They know nothing else but that pleasure. Similarly, the fruitive worker, they continue to strive day after day, year after year, trying to derive some type of pleasure in this material world by enjoying the senses of their body. On the other hand, the realized soul, compared to the swans, the Paramahamsas. And these swan-like birds, they're found in a different location. They're found in the pristine waters of a pond where there are lotus flowers in a very scenic place, in a much more pure place. And these are those that are self-realized beings. The Bhagavad Gita, the 5th chapter, Krishna says, Yehi samsparsascha boga dukkha yonaya evate adya antavanta kunteya nateshu ramate buddha. The intelligent person doesn't strive after material sense gratification. It doesn't engage in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses. Knowing such pleasures that have a beginning and an end, the wise do not delight in them. So that is the mentality of the swan. They don't want to engage in the activities of the crow. In a lecture on this verse, Srila Prabhupada had spoken about that literature is often judged from a public perspective, from an academic perspective, based on its literary completeness, how poetic it is, the metaphorical, the analogies that are used, the ornamental, flowery language that attracts the mind. And he said, just like, you may have an orchestra which has so many different aspects of musical attributes and accompaniment, and it's all performing very well, and it's very attractive to the mind. But unless it's actually meant for the glorification of the Lord, it's temporary, it's limited, and will only bring about some type of mental agitation. It won't bring about peace. It'll only bring about more and more hankering. So in the same way, literature, in the same way, another type of art, even though it is perfectly composed from a literary sense, if it is incomplete if it is not directed toward serving and glorifying the Supreme Lord. And on the other hand, as it's brought up in this verse, that even if there may be some literary incompleteness, maybe it may be judged from a scholarly view of maybe this doesn't have as many great examples or analogies, or maybe the stories aren't as fascinating as the other stories they may judge. But because the subject is perfect, the work is perfect, because it is directly toward the perfect person, Lord Krishna. The activities of these swans, the Paramahamsas, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Machita Makita Prana, Bodhiyantas Parasparam, Kapiyantas Cha Mam Nityam, Tushanti Cha Ramanti Cha. The thoughts of my pure devotees, they dwell in me. Their lives are dedicated to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss by always enlightening each other and conversing about me. That is their activities. Compare that to the activities of the fruitive worker, which are oftentimes, bickering, complaining, fighting amongst each other. So why isn't this Bhagavatam so attractive? Why aren't people so eager to read it and explain it? Even ourselves, we may find, okay, it's a little interesting for some time, but then I have to put it down because I want to watch a movie or watch a game. Srila Prabhupada explains this in the purport. It's because we have a disease, and it can be compared to like jaundice, right? We have no attraction for it. Something that is sweet actually tastes very sour and bitter. But in the liberated state, great souls, they relish these glorifications. In the jaundice state, in the disease state, this literature, this Srimad Bhagavatam, acts as the medicine, just like in Srila Prabhupada, says this in the purport, that the cure to the jaundice is taking more Srimad Bhagavatam, glorification of the holy name, chanting the holy names, performing devotional service. This will cure one from this disease and enhance one's ability to want to hear and relish this transcendental literature. Srila Rupa Goswami, he says, in the liberated state, one will think, why just one ear? Why just 2 ears? Why just one mouth? Why just one tongue? I want many, many millions of tongues, millions of ears, because the enjoyment is so great. I want to turn to the first point here in the purport. It is the qualification of great thinkers to pick up on the best, even from the worst. This is an important point for us. to meditate upon, and it brought me to a story of a pot bearer, a water pot bearer, who every day would go down to the stream and capture water, carrying 2 pots on either side, attached to a pole that she would carry around her neck. And she would go down every day, collect water in the pots and carry them up to the master's house. One pot was complete and the other pot had a crack in it, right around the midline. So by the time they got to the master's house, one pot was full, the other pot was only half full. Year after year, the pot carrier would do this. And finally, the pot that was cracked, feeling very ashamed of itself, when they got to the stream, he said, "Please, just discard me, throw me away. I feel very ashamed. Every day you carry me up, and while the other pot delivers a full pot of water, I can only supply a half a pot. Why not just exchange me for a full pot? After all, you're doing all the work going up and down the hill, and I'm insufficient." Hearing this, the pot bearer said, "On the way up the hill, I want you to take a look at the beautiful flowers along the path, and this will cheer you up." Jai Shishi Gaura ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra ki jai, Shishi Radha Bihari ki jai. And they got to the top of the hill into the master's house, and he said, "Yes, I saw the flowers along the path, but what is the point?" And the point of the flowers is just to cheer me up. And he says, "I knew of your deficiency." She said, "I knew of your deficiency," to the pot that was cracked. He said, "And therefore, I planted seeds along the pathway. And if you notice, on your side of the path, there were flowers growing, but on the other side of the path, there weren't. Because every day, as we carried you up the hill, you watered these seeds. And ultimately, they grew into beautiful wildflowers. Now look at the house. Look at the master's house, and you'll see all these flowers that decorate the house. And this is your offering." So this is kind of the story of our lives, that we are all kind of cracked pots. And and under the guidance of the spiritual master, the devotees, they can utilize us despite all our imperfections in the service of the Lord. Next point I wanted to pause at is this, and get a little discussion on here, is about that quarrel begins even after slight provocation. Srila Prabhupada, he's speaking about there's a war that's about to begin between China and India. This took place in 1962. So this gives a little, and Srila Prabhupada says, just as I'm writing this, this is about to take place. So this gives a perspective into when Srila Prabhupada was writing, these purports, when this dispute between China and India took place. And it's still going on even today. There was back in just last year, there was still some tension that was there, some lives lost, unfortunately. But it brings up this point that it's just due to, even in this polluted atmosphere, just due to slight provocation, there's always a chance of quarrel. And this is due to not the issue in question, but due to the polluted atmosphere of this age. So I just wanted to pause real quickly and anybody have any thoughts, realizations about just how quickly quarrel can ignite and begin, even after slight provocation? things that we see around us, whether we see it on the news, in our own lives, on the train on the way to work, within our family lives. Driving. Somebody cuts you off, or somebody is at the green light and they're texting on their phone and like, come on, you're holding up everybody, and you're honking the horn.
You know what I mean? It's like someone's not moving fast.
There was one experience I had the other day where my parent asked me to order a new debit card, so I was on the phone with the banking company, and there was like a customer service agent, and I thought they had said billing address, so I gave it an address in California, but then they asked if that was my residential, and I was like, oh, that's the residential, it's actually a different address, and they got really, really fried out. They went on to a long tangent. It's like, your residence is where you go to sleep at night after you have a day of work. That place where you go home after you work, and you lay bed, that's your residence. So I'm asking for your residence. You understand? Like, so I was just like, people are just in that all the time. Like this kind of just cried out, just kind of mode of life. And I felt bad for myself because I felt ashamed, but more so felt bad for them because they don't have like a reservoir to kind of take shelter in this. But yeah, just it's like my vacation. Just hearing billing address and residential address.
Right.
She was really upset.
It gets ignited. It's like that. Any others?
The first thing that came to mind about like from family home Christian. So it's very easy. I grew up in a home that was old.
Oh, wow.
And it would happen very quickly, like something like this, especially because they're kind of addicted to various substances, so it just gets so much worse if you can't like, have that right away, or some people get in the way of that. It's just like automatically, it's like flip of the switch. They go from being your brother or your father or your friend to just being this like person that you're not afraid of. It's really scary. Actually, this propensity to anger, so anger is scary, and I thought.
And Srila Prabhupada is explaining why this is due. It's usually not due to a particular thing. It had nothing to do with a credit card or a residency, or somebody got paused for 5 extra seconds at a green light or whatever may anger somebody. Shashi Shekhar, can you read this? This is what Srila Prabhupada says. This is why these quarrels begin.
This is due not to the issue in question, but to the polluted atmosphere of this age. Systematically, there is propaganda by a section of people to stop glorification of the name of the Supreme Lord.
So that is the forces that are acting against us. Say, well, it's Kali Yuga. What that means is that the stringency of Maya, is clamping down on us even more so. So to reverse this, to counteract this, to bring about a revolution in society, to change this atmosphere. That's what this verse is talking about, changing the atmosphere, a revolution to change this atmosphere, which causes all these quarrels, which are based on just the misidentification of oneself, is to bring about the consciousness of Srimad Bhagavatam in this world. And that is the revolution. that the Srimad Bhagavatam is bringing. So when we look at give me 1 second here. Srila Prabhupada, in a famous letter, let me share this real quick. He talks about the disagreements and dissension. Somebody like to read?
Material nature means dissension and disagreement, especially in this body of life. But for this Krishna consciousness movement, that's what we depend on agreement, even though there are varieties of engagement. In the material world, there are varieties, but there is no agreement. In the spiritual world, there are varieties, but there is agreement. That is the difference. The materialist, about being able to adjust the variety of disagreement with everything zero. They cannot come into agreement with variety. But if we keep Krishna in the center, then there will be agreement in variety. This is called unity and diversity.
Yeah.
I am therefore teacher all our humanity and mine every year during the birth anniversary of our 20th Mahaprabhu, with all our senior president of cultivate unity and diversity. But if we quite run out of diversity, then it is the freedom to serve us. Please try to maintain the philosophy of unity and diversity. That will make our movement successful.
So Srila Prabhupada understood that this influence of Kali Yuga is always there and is prevailing, and that disagreement and dissension, even when we're trying not to seek it, even when we're trying to avoid it, is always going to be there. And the solution is that we always have to keep Krishna in the center. And we keep Krishna in the center always. Srimad Bhagavatam in the center, the holy name in the center, the mission of spreading Krishna consciousness to counteract these effects of Kali Yuga in the center. Despite the various ways by which it may be executed, therefore we can always have this unity. Couple pictures that I thought were powerful that can see the harmony when Krishna is in the center. If Krishna is in the center and there's an alignment around that center, everything is in harmony. But when you have multiple centers, now you see the waves of the circles, the ripples, they start to conflict. And then when you have many centers, you can see there's just nothing but conflict. Keeping Krishna in the center. And then the 7 purposes of ISKCON with regards to this purport. When Srila Prabhupada wrote these 7 purposes. The first one, to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large, and to educate all people in the techniques of spiritual life in order to check the imbalance of values in life and to achieve real unity and peace in this world. And that's what this verse is speaking about that we read today. It's to bring about a revolution, to check the imbalances of values that are creating so much conflict in this world, and to teach the techniques of spiritual life. Srila Prabhupada used that word in this purport, the techniques. He says, we're not so interested in the language, we're interested in the spiritual techniques. And then number 2, to propagate a consciousness of Krishna as he is revealed in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is the mission, to bring about the transformation of society. Bringing Srimad Bhagavatam and the principles laid forth in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the consciousness of Krishna, into the world will change the world. And as servants of Srila Prabhupada, we're called to become change agents and distribute this transcendental knowledge to as many people as we can. I had to run back to my apartment on my way back at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I saw some Jehovah's Witnesses standing out in front of the Wawa. And they were passing out pamphlets. And I thought, wow, you know, they get it. You know, they're fired up. It's something impressive, you know, that they're doing. But this Bhagavatam has the ability to change. It has to change us. So we come together, we hear every day, you know, come to class. You have the Zoom classes, we have in-person classes. You can tune into class in Mayapur, you can tune into the class in Vrindavan, in Switzerland, in China. So much is made available to us so that we can hear. And that hearing will purify the heart. It will strengthen the intelligence and focus us on Krishna. And that will bring us unity, keeping Krishna in the center. And then when we are full, try to distribute that to as many people as we can. Okay, any thoughts, questions, comments? Hare Krishna, Mother Golokananda.
The profile one unity, you know, when we say among devotees, there's no unity, we start.
Well, it's this principle of unity in diversity. So Srila Prabhupada recognized that there was much diversity. Oftentimes, I came to this temple in 1995. And I think every year since 1995, I've always heard this. Oh, we're so divided. 1996, oh, we're so divided. 1997, oh, we're so divided. 2019, oh, we're so divided. Right? It's more like change the word divided to diverse. Oh, we're so diverse. Come from different backgrounds. Our being raised in Krishna consciousness may be different. Spiritual masters may be a little different with different focuses. Our age may be different. Our culture may be different. Our ethnicity may be different. Our gender may be different, whatever. Oh, we're so diverse. Srila Prabhupada understood you have to bring, out of this diversity, we have to find unity. You know, material nature means dissension and disagreement. If you fight on the account of diversity, then it's simply the material platform. In the spiritual world, there's much diversity, but yet there's unity. So trying to understand how that can be done by keeping Krishna always in the center, the mission of Srila Prabhupada, always in the center. Accepting that diversity is not a bad thing, but it can actually be embraced and actually can be an ornament in our offerings to Krishna. A lot of discussion has to take place. So in this spirit, every year in Mayapur, there are these meetings called the International Leadership Sanghas. And but more and more discussion needs to be had on this. Because Srila Prabhupada said the success of our movement, and the success of our movement means the success of bringing about this revolution in this world. is dependent upon this principle of unity. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. On a different point, this point in the purport that such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard sung and accepted by purified men who live not so. Originally, the Srimad Bhagavatam was given in Sanskrit, which is the perfect composition. And now what we have is this imperfect composition in English, right? So like English is like an imperfect language in the sense that it doesn't really describe things in the same way that Sanskrit does. So can we understand that, like, even though it's imperfectly composed in English, it's actually still making impact around the world in this other language because of the potency of the Srimad Bhagavatam? I mean, that's what it's saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, when this was originally composed and spoken, it was in Sanskrit. It wasn't being composed in English. So when, Sutta Goswami was, when this is Narada Muni speaking, to Srila Vyasadeva. So you would think that they were speaking of this in Sanskrit. But I think it can be understood that way as well. Srila Prabhupada alludes to that in the purport. We're trying so many different, I'll go to that in a second. I think the other part of it is that it may be viewed that other scriptures, other types of literatures, they may be more attractive in a literary sense. And even if this is be considered, well, it's not as perfect. The subject matter is perfect. And therefore that is the perfection. Not that it's dependent upon the literary structure to be its perfection. Let's see further down. Srila Prabhupada writes about this in the purport. I'll reread it. And this, I think, speaks more to what you were saying. Our presenting this matter in adequate language, especially a foreign language, will certainly fail. And there will be so many literary discrepancies, despite our honest attempt to present it in the proper way. But we are sure with all our faults in this connection, the seriousness of the subject matter will be taken into consideration. So that speaks more to, like, I guess, the translation, things maybe being, not perfectly synonymous with that. But despite that, the potency, the power of the name and the message will remain. And then Srila Prabhupada says, we're not so concerned with the language, we're concerned with the techniques. So luckily, we don't all have to learn Sanskrit to be able to learn this. That's not a pre-qualification, by the grace of Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
The question Prabhupada says, they will accept the truth as being an honest attempt to glorify the Almighty God. When I heard it imperfectly composed, the way that I thought of it was, because you cannot fully, express all the unlimited glory of the Supreme Lord. But this is our honest attempt to, kind of try to deliver that. It's all like, that's, I don't know if that's the correct interpretation also with that, it could be considered imperfect because it can't possibly capture all of it. But that could be.
Yeah. Well, the Srimad Bhagavatam is considered to be Purna, completely full. And, of course, the glories of the Lord are unlimited, as at the same time as well. So I'm not sure, about that. Vishnu Prabhu, you have any thoughts? Yeah.
For different things.
Good.
What you said before. You can see it in different ways.
I see.
Another thing about this is, it's almost predicting that it's gonna be translated. You know, as you said, it was not a dream 5,000 years ago, but then he said, oh, there's gonna be imperfection, but okay, it's still, because of the subject matter and the importance of it is most to be appreciated, so that's kind of an interesting thing in this, for all of them.
Thank you. Anything else? Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai.